Hi, it's Tacticus again, and today we're going to have a look at legendary release events in general and the upcoming Dante event in special. Is it really the hardest legendary event so far? And why would people reach that conclusion? This video will be kept general at first, so it might be a useful resource in the future as well, and get more and more specific. First, I lay out how legendary events work, what they are, and why you should be as effective as you can in the race against the time those events are. In the second half, I'll cover how I planned for Dante's event before giving over to Tech Priest Fred, who I'm proud to announce will cover the enemies in Dante's event. Before we begin though, what are your experiences with legendary events, and who was the first character you unlocked in them? My first was the third Ragnar event. Also, if you haven't used any referral codes yet, you can also help me out a lot by using my code BAD60ADO in-game and earning 100 Blackstone by doing so. What are legendary release events and how do they work? Legendary release events are the events introducing new legendary characters into the game. Each legendary event will come around 3 times with a few months in between, so you can build your roster and see how much you've grown in between. Each legendary event has 3 tracks, Alpha, Beta and Gamma, which determine which enemies you will face and which faction will be prohibited. You have to start at the lowest level of each track and fight through increasingly harder fights in which waves of the appropriate enemy come at you. You will get points for each enemy defeated, up to a maximum equaling the number of enemies in the level, as well as points for your high score in each level and a reward for winning it in one go. If you don't win a fight immediately, the kill points and the kill point high score are still saved, and as soon as you killed as many enemies as are in the level, even over multiple runs, you can advance to the next level. The main bulk of the points comes from the 5 restrictions per track though. If you fight and win a battle with only characters that cater to that restriction, you'll get bonus points. You can do multiple of those at a time to save on tokens. A legendary event will start you at 6 tokens and give you one more every 3 hours, as well as one you can get by an ad watch each day. There are 14 battles per event track. Progress is saved between events, so no easy farming of the lower levels every time it comes around. Other than you growing stronger, the later events will get easier by repeating the event mission chain every event, moving the goalpost for points in your favor every event should you finish the missions. Every 250 points you will earn a payout of event currency, and if you get enough of that, you'll unlock chests with always 25 shards of the character in there and some nice small side rewards. You'll need 400 event shards to get the character. As soon as the third event ends, the remaining event shards are transformed into normal shards. So, if you missed by only 25 shards, you're only missing 125 shards for a full legendary unlock. Sounds mean, but be grateful. Before that change, the shards were awarded at different intervals, and you'd be stuck at 125 when you just didn't make it. The race against time. Legendary events are a race against time. The question is not really when do you unlock the character in a given legendary event, but rather at which event will you be able to get them. Legendary events are endgame content, and you probably won't be able to do it without several characters at gold. If you just started the game and have missed an event of a character, you will probably not grow fast enough to finish it by the third time without spending money. You will get 8 tokens per day plus the ad watch for 9 tokens a day. An event goes for 7 days, so you're looking at 63 tokens plus the 6 you get at the beginning. Since you won't be able to use the last token as the event ends, that's 68 tokens total. To finish a legendary event, you will roughly need to clear the first 8 levels of legendary event to completion. Since you haven't accumulated the event currency from the mission chains multiple times during the first events, you will need to go a bit further then. For simplicity's sake, let's say you need to clear level 9 in the first event and level 8 in the last. That's 24 to 27 levels cleared. You'll need more than one battle per level, as you can't possibly fulfill all requirements at once. Some are even mutually exclusive. If you were to only do one requirement per battle, you'd need 5 battles per level, getting you to 13 fully cleared levels. You'd get your character at the second event at that slow but steady pace. If you want to get the character first try, you'd hope to only use around 2.5 tokens per battle. Your suboptimal lineups will maybe be able to clear a track in 2 goes at the first few levels, but later on, when the enemies get stronger, they'll overwhelm you, so you can't take the bottom of your lineup to the fight. To finish reliably the first event, you'd want to clear the lower levels in like 2 attempts and the higher ones in around 3, I'd say. At which point you want to switch that up is up to you and your roster. And it's also up to you whether you want to push all tracks at the same time. Most of the time, one track is easier, due to the enemies featured or due to your roster just being more prominent here. You also don't have to clear one level to perfection before moving on. Imagine you can get the kill points, bonus points for finishing a stage, and 4 restrictions with just 2 tokens. If you haven't hit your ceiling yet, I'd encourage you to push your high point winning teams further and clean up the leftovers when you can't progress any further. That way you'll get more points per token and will be more effective. When you cleaned out all restrictions you can, it's also always a good idea to take your best team and just try to get the winning and kill points for the level you can't tackle otherwise. It will be a slow progress, but still help in the grand scheme of things. What characters to look for in a legendary release event? Let's assume you started a battle and have 10 characters at hand for the requirement you want to do. Who do you take? The mode is played in waves and the enemies will be weak at first, but slowly grind down your characters. If you want to survive, you have only 3 real options. First, be overpowered or tanky enough and just don't care. Second, heal your characters back up. Or third, just distract them with enough summons to kill so your original characters live longer. This mode is not for the frail likes of Elturon, but rather tyrant guards, continual spawners like Tangida, and healers, especially Isabella and Rotbone, as those are adept at healing in your enemy's turn too. Watch my video on Action Economy on that topic. Your enemies are higher in numbers, so you need to make sure your actions count. How to plan for legendary release events. First off, I'll encourage you to use the Tacticus Planner app. It lets you filter all your characters for the appropriate restrictions and thus serves to give you a better overview who to push until the event. It was pretty tedious to feed the app your data for a long time, but Tacticus has recently released its API, so with a few clicks you can get the planner to just import your characters. So far, I haven't looked much at legendary release events and basically went with the flow of playing. But hearing of how difficult Dante will be, I made sure to plan accordingly. I went to the planner, looked at the restrictions and searched for overlapping characters between them. I then put all of those into a matrix and noted the overlapping characters. As in all nodes, you need a minimum of 3 to start the battle. That's 10 combinations of 2 restrictions each to check for each track. I also made sure to mark down how many of the characters that overlap were summoners or healers. That's a really rough first go at it, but it will do for now. You can also try to aim for teams with healers and overlapping restrictions, which I'll also entertain for each round. Of course, it would be optimal to have decent synergy in a team wherever possible, but spoiler, that's really hard if you want to fulfill multiple restrictions in Dante's event. I claimed before you'd need to use 2.5 or fewer tokens per battle. So of course, we strive for 2 or 3 restrictions checked at any point. It's greedy, but I hope it will work out. I don't claim to have any solutions and just went at it. So if you have a vastly different strategy, let me know in the comments. We have to face it. Dante's event is pretty frustrating. There's little overlap between restrictions, and a lot of those restrictions don't feature any healers or an otherwise bad healer. I pretty much approach this like a Sudoku. I'll see how much overlap there is between restrictions, how many points those combinations will give you, and then think about whether I think that team might make it. I can do that because I have a pretty broad roster. If you don't, you'll have to look at your best characters first to see what restrictions they fit and who will fit with them. You still have a few weeks to grind up neglected characters that would round out the team. It doesn't have to do it until the top, but if I can check 3 boxes at once for the bottom 4 levels, at least I've been effective there. The gaps can be filled later. Let's look at the alpha track of the Dante event. You can see that I mark the combinations of characters depending on how much choice of characters you get, between not possible, just technically possible, a full team, and having at least some choice. The alpha track features Necrons as enemies and prohibits the use of any Xenos characters. That leaves us with 18 characters that fit the maximum one-hit criterion, 23 with power attacks, 12 with physical attacks, 9 psychers, and 8 rapid assault characters. I'm not counting Dante himself yet here. I looked at all healers that worked with the restrictions here and there's Rodbone for power, Nicodemus for rapid assault, and Vitruvius and Incisus for one hit. No overlap, so not fast enough for me in the early stages of the event. I might come back to them when I can't fulfill 2 restrictions at once anymore. The most points are given out for Psychers at 90 points for the restriction, and since there is a total of 0 overlap with rapid assault and only one character that's a Psyker and has power or physical attacks, the combination with max 1 hits seems to be best. It gives 140 points and leaves us with 7 characters available, 2 of which are summoners. Sounds solid. Rapid Assault also gives 90 points and, as rare as it is, it still has one combination that's even illegible, which is power attacks. There are 3 characters here, Mataneo, Jäger and Godswill, no healers, and although Mataneo brings in 2 supports every turn, he himself is quite fragile for the higher levels. This would be 155 points, but with a very limited shelf life. If I use those teams, I have to do physical for 80 points on its own. 12 characters including Tangida and Mataneo is solid and should go a long way. No healers in there though, so even this team will have its problems at some point. The only possible combination here would have been with max 1 hit, but as Psyker gives more points and has more combinations with more summoners, I think that will be easier. So for Alpha, with my personal lineup, I try to go with Mataneo, Godswill and Jäger as far as it's sustainable to rack up points fast, then try to clear as much as I can with Apraxas, Typhus, Sibyl, Archimatos and Tigurius, just because my Tomakos is weaker, although he would have fit in with the other 3 Chaos Mages better. For the beta track, we go up against the Black Legion, and are not allowed any Chaos characters. The possible healers are Isabella with only no power, Ale of Null with no power, Actus with no power, Vitruvius with max 3 hits, Incisus and Holland with max 3 hits and no power, and Nicodemus with no power and Shane. Looking at this list, only Nicodemus, Holland and Incisus would be fast enough to be really considered. But I'm greedy. And looking at the other lineup, there's something that hits the eye immediately. Let's see if you can spot it. There's 52 characters with max 3 hits, 51 with no power, 6 with deep strike, 5 with get stuck in, and 5 with train attacks. The get stuck in characters only have one full team of characters, the Orcs. Those were buffed recently and have decent synergy, so why not take them? And, oh wonder, they overlap 100% with no power, which isn't worth a lot of points, but I'll take it. Then there's 4 characters overlap with maximum 3 hits. That means dropping our only healer Gibber would mean a total of 210 points, hitting 3 restrictions at once and having 4 decent characters that are quite accessible. I'll try to push that team first and as high as I can, since it's by a long shot the highest scoring team possible in this event. The remaining Deep Strike and Chain don't have overlap though, so we still need 2 more tokens to finish the restrictions off, which is a shame. No Power and Get Stuck In comes free with each other, so I won't search for any combinations for either elsewhere. Deep Strike and maximum 3 hits would have 5 characters, which can be used when the orcs start to crack. But I'm not even sure Mataneo, Aetana, Barakiel, Ayark and the Death Leaper are superior to the 4 orcs. At least not in my case, with the level I have the characters at. And Snotflogger and Gilgords have really nice summons. One with good quality, and the other one with a good quantity and sustainability. Chain could be mixed with max 3 hits, but that's only 3 characters. Chain no power seems nice with Nicodemus and all, but if you don't count Snapper Wrecker as a mechanic unit that doesn't really fit in, you're stuck with 4 characters as well. So yeah, it's orcs all the way for me. Last is Gamma, fighting the Astor Militarum and Blood Angels, not using any Imperial characters. Healers that fit restrictions are Rodbone for min 4 hits, Aleph for min 5 hits and no power, and Holland for no power. No synergies with other restrictions to be found here but for Aleph. No power sports 39 characters but is only worth 50 points. Terminators have 6 available, min 4 hits is 15 characters, Flame has 6 and Physical has 9. Physical is the most valuable restriction at 95 points, but can only be mixed with the low performing no power. That would leave us with min 4 hits Flame and Terminator on its own. If we were to combine the possible good team of no power and min 4 hits instead, we'd have Terminator, Flame and Physical left over. Terminator works with none of those, and Flame and Physical have no overlap either, so we'd have to fight each level 4 times to complete it. This means we basically have to take Physical and no power for a team of Gibber, Snot, Yasagor, Makotep and Kalantis. Truly not the A-team. We'll need to switch to no power 4 hits later after all. Rivers, Aleph, Immospec are a nice core, and Karn and Rask could work well together. Min 4 hits can be combined with Flame, but is only 3 characters for high points yield. I feel only confident in this team because my Rivers is Diamond 3 and will solo some levels. It's the most points there, but clearly not optimal. So, those are my crackshot teams. Doesn't look inspiring, eh? I probably hit a wall pretty early on. Barely any healers, almost no synergies. As if this event had been designed not to be possible in the first try. And you know what? Snowprint even said as much in the last explainer, that it should be harder to get legendary release event characters. I have to agree to a certain event, but a more gradual increase would have gone a long way here. Now, I give over to Tech Priest Fred, who agreed to help out by going over the enemies for this event and how to manage them. Fred does some very nice out-of-the-box thinking and fun videos. Check out his video on how to make Certus invincible for some tongue-in-cheek fun, or his video on why blue starring heroes might even be a bad idea. Thanks again for coming here.
Hey everyone, Tech Priest Fred here, coming in hot to give you some basic tips about the lineups that you are going to be fighting in the next legendary release event. So, for the alpha track, we are fighting the Necrons and we cannot use the Xenos characters. So, the priority target against Necrons is always the Scarabs, because letting them multiply is a sure way to lose a fight. Bringing in characters that effectively score 5 hits or can kill swarms, like for example Mataneo, while still fitting the 1-hit requirement, is a good way to push the event. Blast damage also helps here, so for example you can use Pestillion. The destroyers are also a huge danger if they are equal to your level or if they are above your team in terms of the power. So focusing them down should be priority 2 if they could kill one of your characters. For example, bringing a character that can deal high single target damage may be of use here. And in the beta track, we are fighting the Black Legion, and since we are fighting the Chaos, we cannot use Chaos. And this lineup of enemy units is well known to most of the players. The biggest problem is the raw damage potential of the Bloodletters and the fact that the Terminators will always hit you first, which means that it's harder to fight them when you are underleveled. Surviving the Bloodletters requires a strong frontline tank, preferably with a healer, so the classic Marine Turtle strategy with Isabella will work well, if you are having difficulties clearing, that is. You just need to position correctly so the Terminators won't be able to kill off your healers, that's it. Other than that, this track seems the easiest to clear outside of the Deep Strike requirement. And for the Gamma track, once again, a familiar lineup of enemies. We are fighting the Imperial Guard with one new addition, the Blood Angels. Overall, they are very mobile and can hit hard, so you will need to be careful. What this changes in the gameplay loop is that even if you block off all the entries to the level with the famous Angrax strategy, the Blood Angels will fly over your characters anyway, and they will hit you hard. So be careful, since they can very easily kill off your ranged damage dealers or healers if you misposition them. Other than that, focusing down the Vox Guardsmen to prevent infinite waves of Guardsmen is the way to go. And then, against the Imperial Guard, you always need to push into the map as fast as possible in order to force them into melee. You will get butchered by las cannons and mortars if you don't. And that's it for my part. Thanks for having me, Tactifux, and I hope that this one small collab is the very first of many in our careers. Praise the Omnisire!
Praise the Omnisire indeed, and thanks again for your help. I'm looking forward to appear on your channel too at some point in the future. Conclusion. Banning Chaos and Imperial factions from certain tracks has been done before. In the case of Chaos, that barely hurt, and for the Imperium, it really did and made those no Imperium tracks some of the hardest ones around in the last events, at least for me. Xenos often only prohibited the fraction that was the enemy. Completely banning them here is hard to recover from. It cuts a lot of characters from the roster. I feel it's a bit of a divide there, because whereas the entire Chaos and Imperium roster can be used in their sub-factions campaigns, it makes sense to ban them from attacking their allies. For Xenos that don't work together in their campaigns, it's a harder sell for me. If you look at the healers, you notice also that they fill oddly few requirements here. Of the most prominent healers, Isabella fills only one track. Rodbone fills only one restriction in 2 tracks, Nicodemus fills 3 total, Aleph 3 total, Actus 1, Vitruvius 2, Incisus 3, and Holland 3. Some of those are even overlapping. Keep in mind that of those 18 restrictions fulfilled by quote-unquote good healers, a lot of are doubled, and 8 of those come from the low-priced no-power restriction, which won't do much good. Restrictions have become noticeably more narrow this event, with 8 out of 15 having fewer than 10 characters total filling them. 5 even only have 5 or 6 characters in them, making overlap noticeably rarer. This is another thing that hits me with this event. There's not a lot of overlap. We need the overlap though to be able to progress ranks fast enough, and instead of rewarding a pro roster with quick progress, this time it seems the reward seems to be able to fulfill the restrictions at all. There is only one possible combination in the whole event that lets you tackle 3 restrictions at once, and some combinations are really shoehorned as you saw before. I really tried to make at least some early levels beatable with 2 tokens, but I just couldn't. The battles all need 3 or more tokens to clear. I think this event has been meticulously crafted to be harder to complete and to be slower than earlier legendary events. Snowprint have labeled legendary events late game content, and I think they should be. Now, more and more people have reached a level where it's easy for them to acquire legendary characters and get them free, and at least I feel like I've seen a lot more blue star posts of the second Peta Mine event compared to earlier events. Legendary characters should of course feel legendary, hard to acquire, but it can feel like moving the goalpost a bit. Players that can comfortably beat legendary events in the first try either been paying or playing for more than a year. In my case, it took around 18 months to be able to beat the legendary events in their first try reliably, with some hiccups along the way. Maybe I'm just bad at the game though. Keep in mind, I'm not a free-to-play player. If a player has spent a lot of money or time to progress in the game, I feel they are at a point where they can proudly claim to be in the late game. If I could wish for anything in further legendary events, it would be more overlap between restrictions. They can be highly specific to reward a broader roster, but should have at least some synergy. I'd also advocate for some small quality of life improvements that have been asked for a long time. A legendary event like restrictions filter in the character menu would be highly appreciated to prepare for upcoming events and learn to categorize characters earlier. I'd also enjoy being able to retreat from legendary event battles without spending a token before starting, so you can see the map and play around with your roster and the restrictions. Since we all can just look up the maps online day one, I don't think that would be a big shakeup. What other quality of life improvements can you think of? How are you preparing for the upcoming event? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day.